Yes, we have an icon tonight. An icon. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another jam-packed edition of the End of the Night. Joe, we're just a couple of weeks away from Halloween, which I'm super excited about. Our big Halloween night extravaganza, the epic Vincent Price tapes, where we will play an interview that's never, ever been heard before with the late, great horror icon, living legend. Well, he's not living. The unliving legend himself, Vincent Price, on Halloween night in a star-studded Halloween extravaganza. It's just 2 weekends away, so I'm super excited about that. Welcome again, everybody, tonight. Our show is brought to you by none other than Film Hub. If you're an independent filmmaker and you want to get your film out to the masses, seek out Film Hub. They are amazing. They're amazing with getting your films on platforms, and they have so many ways to help you get your film to look right on these platforms. They're just wonderful. Seek out Film Hub if you're looking to get your film out to the public.
And also brought to you by StreamYard. Everybody asks us how we keep our... No, I just wanted to see David's face getting all nervous and everything when the audio cut out. How we keep our streams looking professional. Go to StreamYard. They do have a free trial. Also brought to you by Hearts of the Mystic Folk. They have awesome wax scents that you should really check out. Yeah, see, I'm all flustered now because we were time crunching and we were 2 minutes late. So I'm like, yeah.
You know what? Those actually make a wonderful holiday gift. Those wax melts, they're absolutely fantastic. So Joe, I'm telling you, I am so psyched. It is already October 17th. It's my favorite month. I'm getting my house ready for my big Halloween bash, which is going to be on October 30th this year. I'm super psyched. I put my Halloween decorations out, and hi, Sean. Hi, Tim. Hi, CJ. Thank you for all joining us tonight. I am beyond honored to literally have a living legend on our show tonight. I have never actually interviewed or had anybody on my show before that was actually affiliated with the great Night of the Living Dead, one of the all-time great horror movies of all time, one of up there. And tonight, hello Emmett at Haven for Heroes. Tonight we have the man who came up with, who created the concept, who was one of the original writers of the all-time horror cult classic, probably one of the biggest cult classics of all time. Night of the Living Dead. Mr. John Russo will be with us in just a few minutes, and I'm super excited because he's a great guy and he's super knowledgeable, and he's really, if you ever get a chance to go to a horror convention that John is at, first of all, he's very, very approachable. He's super awesome with his fans. Go up and see John, and he brings memorabilia like you've never seen before. He has stuff like signed checks that were paid out for Night of the Living Dead cast and crew, and he has scripts and newspaper clippings. He's literally like a walking encyclopedia. But what's so great about him, if you get to go to a show where John is, he's very, very kind and generous with his time, and he's very, very kind and generous with his knowledge. And if you are in the film industry, or if you're an independent filmmaker, or if you are just want to learn about his wonderful career, he's just a great guy. So we'll have Mr. Russo on in just a few minutes. Joe, is the lovely and super talented Grunkle Scott available?
I believe he is.
Then without further ado, on this mid-October night where it's really, really cool up here in the woods of Pennsylvania, it's only in the upper 40s, and I'm sure there's all kinds of werewolves and vampires lurking in the woods right outside my very walls. Let's bring in one of the most horrifying people I know, Grunkle Scott Schiaffo.
Nice. Thank you.
Hi, Grunkle Scott.
Hello. Hello, gentlemen. How are you?
Now, I'm going to drop some news that is breaking. That's right here. No one else has heard this. It's right here on the end of the night. My little werewolf film, Full Moon Fever. Hopefully, Mr. Scott Schiaffo and myself will be convening this Thursday to film our iconic final scene of the movie. So
did you say final?
Yeah, well, the last day with you will be the last day. That'll be the
shooting.
The martini shot. Yes, the martini shot. The last day of shooting.
Not the final scene in the movie.
Oh no.
No. Right, the final shooting. Gotcha.
The final day of shooting.
Okay, I'm on a need-to-know basis.
Yes.
I'll spill something.
Yes, John Russo will be at New Jersey HorrorCon November 12th to the 14th. So, Grunkle Scott, you have a big show coming up too in the first week of November, don't you?
Wait, man, crazy! Rhode Island Comic Con, first weekend in November. I don't have it committed to memory. It's either 456 or 567 or 789. There it is, 5 through 7. And there's one person missing from that picture, the Weissman from the second film, who's hilarious. But look at that. That's crazy. That's like everybody ever. It's the most Clerks people I've ever. This is more people in one room than I was even with them on the set.
Wow.
There's some people who weren't on the set ever with me,
Before we bring the living legend John Russo out, I want to take a minute and apologize to everybody at the Sci-Fi in the Valley Con in Altoona. This would have been my 10th consecutive show, but sadly, I had a little tragedy within my family. When I say my family, I don't mean my wife and daughter. I mean my brother. He had taken ill, and I had to attend to him. And I deeply regret not making it out to Sci-Fi in the Valley Con. So anybody who went out last weekend to see me, I humbly apologize. And if you wish, you could just IM me on Facebook. And if you want a signed copy of Mr. Hush or a signed headshot of any of my films, it's on me. So just send me an IM, and I'd be more than happy to hook you up. With that being said, Mr. Ridgely, Mr. Schiaffo, yes?
Well, I just wanted to thank you gentlemen again for joining us on Monday when we were introducing the Indie Escape cast and crew. It was awesome of you guys to show up. Greatly appreciated. And for those of you who don't know, the Indie Escape is going to be doing 7 shows a week. So Monday or Sunday through Saturday. Yeah,
that would be 7 days. Yes, Sunday.
That would be 7 days. See, again, that whole flustered thing. But thank you, gentlemen. It was greatly appreciated. You guys.
It was absolutely our pleasure. And I also want to thank pop culture icon Brian O'Halloran, who was with me that night and was kind enough to stop on that show. And Emmett Garnham, the wonderful man, the genius behind
he was trying to get in. Brian kept shoving him to the side.
Yeah, he's Brian's always strong on him, camera hog, trying to strong on people. With that being said, yes, it's absolutely an honor to hang out with you too, CJ. You're awesome. And CJ, one of our family here at the Indie Escape, has a short film out there that's easily found if you look up CJ Robles. And he has an incredibly handsome guest star in that, so make sure you check it out because, no, I said handsome. With that being said, we have a living legend, an icon. The very last thing we should do is keep him in the green room. He's a die-hard Steeler fan, and he's watching his Steelers beat the Seahawks tonight. But he was kind enough to step aside to come on and talk to a couple schmucks like us. A living legend, a horror icon, Mr. John Russo, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, John, how are you?
Hey.
Oh, I don't see myself here yet. Oh, there I am, coming up.
Can you hear us, John?
I still get a kick out of how blue I look with this camera setup of mine. I have to get something done.
Well, just tell everybody out there watching tonight that you are in Alaska and that you are overly cold.
I'm sorry, what?
I said, well, just tell everybody tonight that you're in Alaska and you're overly cold. How are you, John?
Yeah, right. I'm very good, doing well. Watching the Steelers, and at halftime, they were winning 14-0 over Seattle, so I hope they keep it up. I'd like to see them win, because then I get to see more playoff games.
Absolutely. And yeah, I'm a Jet fan, so sadly I never get to watch any playoff games.
Oh.
John, I want to dive right into the interview. I want to ask you, how did you get involved with what is generally regarded one of the top horror films of all time, Night of the Living Dead? How did that all start? What was the very foundation of how that movie came together?
George Romero, Russ Streiner, and I met when we were 18 years old. We were the same age. George came to Pittsburgh to go to Carnegie Tech, which is now Carnegie Mellon, and he was a fine arts major. And my friend Rudy Ritchie, who I grew up with and graduated from high school with, and he was also a fine arts major. I was at West Virginia University. Rudy and I both wanted to be writers, and we would critique each other's writing and so on. And then Rudy phoned me and said, I met this great guy, George Romero, because I'm Richie, R-I-C-C-I, and he's Romero. We were together in line wearing our freshman beanies. And so that's how we met. And then we're in the life class together, and we're supposed to be drawing this nude model. And George is drawing scenes from Ben-Hur on his pad. So that was one of George's favorite movies, and I guess it still was for a long time. So he said, you have to meet George. So when I came home from Christmas vacation, Rudy had a 1955 Plymouth, already a few years old then, convertible. And we drove over to George's apartment in the Oakland section of Pittsburgh. And Rudy honked the horn, and George came down onto the sidewalk wearing a big sombrero, drooping black mustaches, two bandoleros full of ammunition, and two pistolas. We didn't comment. We were too cool for that. He got in the car and we drove off to get some ice cream. Went to a Dairy Queen. The girl saw us coming and slammed the window shut. Wouldn't wait on us. So, and we just laughed and drove away, Rudy said, you should have seen George last week. He was covered head to toe in tinfoil. And that was probably, there was a sci-fi movie at that time. It might have been, can't think of the name of that movie now. But anyway, there was one of those movies that had a very metallic looking creature from outer space. And so that was one of George's favorite movies. So he covered himself with tinfoil. Okay, you might want to know now, why was he in a sombrero with ammunition and pistolas and everything? Well, one of his favorite movies was Viva Zapata, starring Marlon Brando. And it's a fabulous movie. If you've never seen it, you really have to. John Steinbeck wrote the script. And I didn't see it till a couple of years later, and it is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Absolutely. And so you met with George and your friends at college. How did the idea of what essentially became Night of the Living Dead come to you?
Well, I got out of the Army when I was going into the Army after I graduated from college. George and Russ were setting up a film production company on about $500 in a Bolex camera. And they said, when you get out of the Army, you can come and work with us. And as unlikely as it seemed, with them sitting in this storefront where they had to eat chip ice out of the commode bowl in the morning, and they had a pet monkey and a pet owl and so on. But that dream of working with them and making movies kept me going through a couple of years in the Army. So I got out and started learning the business from scratch along with them. And eventually we had a wall full of words in our studio, but we wanted to be feature filmmakers. We kept sleeping on the floor and, starving and all that kind of stuff. And then finally we bought a 35 millimeter blimp to Aeroflex for $3,500 from a lab. And we're complaining about the fickleness of our clients and how we're always broke and all that kind of thing. George Romero, Richard Ritchie, Rudy's cousin, and I drinking beer and eating grilled provolone sandwiches. And I said, well, we bought that camera and now we have everything we need. At 16 millimeter, we have our own cameras and lighting and editing gear and so on. What if 10 of us chipped in $600 each? We have $6,000. Maybe we could shoot 35 millimeter black and white and work print it down to 16 millimeter and do the edit and mix and so on. And we got to be able to make a better horror film than what we're seeing Bill Cardill's show, Chiller Theater. So George got all excited and smacked the table with his hands so hard the bottles and glasses rattled, and everybody looked down. George yelled, "We're going to make a movie!" At any time there was a prospect of making a movie, and Richard said, "You guys are stoned crazy." I said, "Well, you want in or out?" He said, he blew a bunch of smoke rings, and then he said, "I'm in." So that's how it got started. 10 of us putting in $600 each,
Mm-hmm.
And funny thing about it was, we get back to the studio, and Russ said, "I'm in." He said, "I'll work up some figures." He goes into his office and comes out a couple hours later, and he said, "I got bad news. We can't do it on 6,000. It's going to take 12,000." So George went totally in the dumps. George would crash anytime there was like a roadblock and put in our path. He would get utterly depressed. And I thought for a couple of minutes, and I said, "Well, wait a minute, the first 10 people put in $600, but we don't want just money. It's going to be 6 of us. We're the filmmakers. We can get Carl Hardman and Marilyn Eastman. They can act in it, okay? The first 10 people have to do something besides kicking in money. So the next 10 people, they can get just 2 shares for their $600. We get 6 and they get 2. And that way we'll have some stock left over so we can at least maybe make a profit." But George started coming out of the dumps, and that's how we started. That's the whole start of it.
That's awesome.
You probably wanted to know more about how the script got made.
Yeah, I was more of how the concept, the thought of the film came to you.
Well, at that point, Rudy Ritchie lived about 10 miles out of town, and he was working on a novel. And George and I were the 2 writers in our little film company called The Latent Image. So we started bashing ideas around, and I said, well, whatever we do ought to start in a cemetery, because people find cemeteries scary. Even in Abbott and Costello Meet Dracula, it's funny, but it's scary at the same time. Those candles are moving all over the coffin, and so I started working on a thing where kids, eventually, after bashing ideas around, I started writing a thing where these kids, it's Halloween night, and kids in costume, including one of them wearing a ghoul mask, have stolen a case of beer and they're going to hide it in the cemetery. And they get caught. And the one kid gets punished. He gets grounded, but he runs away from home. And he's running through this field. And crack, he steps through a pane of glass. And under that pane of glass is a rotting corpse. And so you find out that visitors from outer space are here already, so we don't have to show a saucer landing and all that stuff we couldn't afford because they're already here. And they like to eat human flesh, and so they kill people and they put them under these panes of glass like growing hothouse tomatoes or something, because they like the flesh to be a little rotted, you know.
Wow.
I got that. I had read about, in medieval times, in England, if they shot a goose, they'd hang it up for a few days and let it rot a little bit. Well, I guess that didn't kill them. Probably would kill us. But anyway, so that was my thought about that. So then George, around the same time, didn't show up for a few days, and then around Christmas time, 1967, and he came in and he had this 20 or 30 pages of a story. It wasn't in screenplay format, it was in story format, but it had a girl and her brother going to a cemetery to put flowers on their father's grave, and the brother gets into this fight with this person. You don't know what he is, but he looks half demented. You know, the brother gets his head smashed on a tombstone, and then this creature or person starts chasing the girl and so on. And he had written this thing all the way up to where the girl runs into the house and a little beyond that. And I said, you know, George, this is really good. It has all the right twists and turns and suspense, but who's chasing this girl? You never say. He said, I don't know. I said, well, reading it, I thought they could be dead people. He said, that's good. I said, but what are they after? You didn't say that either. They don't bite, they don't claw. What's the thing? And he said, I don't know. And I said, well, why don't we use my flesh-eating idea? He said, that's good. So that's dead people after human flesh, and without that idea, those two ideas, you don't have Night of the Living Dead or anything that came after it. So
You know what, Scott and Joe, we are talking right now to the man who created the flesh-eating zombie, the whole concept and the idea. And just think about what that really entails. And there's no Walking Dead without John. There's no Night of the Living Dead. There's no all of those movies. So that's just really, really an awesome story, John. And it blows my mind that a couple guys from Pittsburgh got together and made a film that will transcend film history and all of not only horror genre, but of all film history. Scott, we had spoke pre-show a couple times on the phone when we knew that an icon like John was going to join us. And you did some research and you had come up with something in regards to Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Do you want to ask John about that whole scenario that happened there?
Yeah, John, somewhere along the line when I was doing reading about Night of the Living Dead, and as you know, I don't have to tell you, all these decades of the mystique and the mystical and what really happened and what's rumored to have happened, you know, I kind of can identify with what that's like on a smaller level with a film I was part of where there's a lot of mystique around it and not all of it's true. But somewhere along the line, I heard that Fred Rogers was part, like a friend to the production, and some people may have worked for Fred Rogers of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood fame that also worked on Night of the Living Dead. Is there any truth to that or real connection?
Well, when I was in the Army, George and Russ did some work on the Fred Rogers show, but I wasn't there, so I didn't take part in that. But I knew it had happened. We used also Bob Trose in the second movie we made. You know, he was the troll, and we made a movie called There's Always Vanilla, started released as The Affair through in the early '70s, but Bob Trout was a supporting actor in that. And Betty Aberlin, we used her in beer commercials. Later, she was actually in the Booby Hatch, my satire on the sex revolution that we made in the mid '70s. So those are the connections I can think of. But I had nothing to do with the Fred Rogers show.
Sure. Interesting. Thank you.
That, when you were done with Night of the Living Dead, and you guys, I assume, all got together to see a screening of it or a premiere. Zombies, will you be my neighbor? Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeffrey Weissman of Back to the Future, George McFly. Nice to see you, Jeff. Did you know when you guys just finished watching Night of the Living Dead for the first time, did you know that you guys had made something that was so culturally important?
Well, we felt the whole time through the whole making of the movie. You know yourself. I saw your movie, Mr. Hush, which I think is really, really good.
Oh, thank you.
So you know, as a filmmaker, you guys all know that there's electricity in the air anytime you start shooting, because it's so hard to get anything green lighted or going in this business. And so it's almost a miracle when any picture's being made. And here we were doing our first feature. We had total confidence. We were solidly behind George Romero as director, which, a lot of times there's backstabbing and ego problems and everything else. And we had very little of that once we started rolling. So, and then George started to edit some stuff. George was a very good editor, among other things. And I remember Carl Hardman said, "I think we have a movie here." I think the rest of us already knew, those of us at Late Image that were filmmakers at that time. We knew we were making a good movie. And I kind of have proof of that. Well, when it got finished and we were getting ready, the premiere was going to happen. So Russ Streiner and I handled most of the publicity and promotion and everything else concerning the premiere. I was being interviewed by a newspaper not far from where I live now. And they called me a brash young man in the article. They interviewed me and Dwayne Jones. Dwayne also is from this area, from Duquesne, Pennsylvania, right across the river from Pittsburgh. And they called me a brash young man because I was saying that we had made a good movie, and I was making no bones about that, You've seen the still of me. I played a zombie in the movie. We called them ghouls, not zombies. And so I'm known as the tire iron ghoul because I fight with Ben, and he puts a tire iron in my head, and I have this shot of me where I'm wearing a white shirt and a sport coat. And this is when I first got into the makeup, and I tell people when I'm signing that this is. They say, "Did you know the movie was going to become a classic?" I said, "Hell yeah! Well, why do you think I wear this white shirt?" So I'd have a place to sign, And they laugh, I'm always joking with the fans.
I remember when you and I, we were having a bite to eat together, and you had told me a story about at its heyday, when Night of the Living Dead was like at its heyday. You would go to places like Studio 54 and stuff and be actually treated like a rock star. Is there any of those type of stories you'd like to share with us?
I'd go where? I'm sorry, I didn't catch it.
You said you went out to we were out to lunch, and you were telling me how you would go out to nightclubs, and Night of the Living Dead was so enormous that you guys were like treated like rock stars. Are there any stories like that you'd like to share with us?
We still are, but we don't let it go to our heads or anything. It's we're mostly about what we're doing now. You can't rest on your laurels no matter what, especially when you're getting ripped off for all the money. So we didn't become instantly rich. We became stars in a lot of people's minds, but we were still struggling financially because the distributor was scarfing up all the money.
Yeah, sadly, a story that a lot of filmmakers can really relate to.
Yeah.
One of your films that I would like you to touch on is one you wrote called Voodoo Dawn. What are your what are your thoughts about that film? Because I really like that movie.
Well, I think it's one of the worst films ever made. One of the, I mean, it's a real shame because they hired me to write this script. I mean,
Uh-huh.
Bill Link was involved with Steve Mackler from Bedford Entertainment, and Bill said they wanted to make a movie that had something to do with probably zombies or something. He had a couple ideas, and I have ideas in my file, which I always do have, and I wrote Voodoo Dawn. The original title was Chango, after this voodoo sorcerer, and I wrote the novel, and they paid me a relatively small amount of money for doing this, and then they kept hiring one writer after another to bastardize the script, and that happens a lot too. Is distributors will buy a script because they love it, and then they start second guessing it and trying to improve it, and the next thing the thing ends up it's neither fish nor fowl, and it's pretty awful. Um, Except Tony Todd got cast as in the lead role, and he came in, to do the Night of the Living Dead 1990 remake, and that's what he told me when I first met him. He said, I was in this movie that you wrote called Voodoo Dawn. Don't blame me.
No, if I were
Recently, I got in touch with Steve Mackler because I'd still like to make the movie that I wrote, which is totally different from what got made. And Steve said, well, I can't let you do it now because I'm trying to sell my whole library, and that's part of it, and I don't want to let it go. And blah, blah. So maybe it'll happen sometime if I live long enough.
No, I was a fan because I'm a big Gina Gershon fan, and she was in that. Another question is you've directed over a dozen movies. Out of all the films you directed, John, which one is your personal favorite?
Probably The Mob Boss and the Soul Singer, because I just had so much fun doing it. Chuck Corby's a friend of mine, and he's known as a world-class soul singer. I got to know him and the band and all their zany stories and adventures, and I'm really big into music, and I love Chuck's music. Chuck Corby and Quiet Storm is the band, and so I wrote this film. I titled it Saloonatics because when I was in my 20s, one of my friend's mother used to call us Saloonatics. She said, "You're all Saloonatics because you can never get out of the saloon." And I always thought I wanted to make a movie under that title, and later we changed it to The Mob Boss and the Soul Singer with Bruno Sammartino playing the mob boss. So it's not a horror film, but it's about a band that's been struggling for 30 years to make it big, and they're victimized by the music business, the Shylocks, their own lives, and everybody else. And then they get a chance to steal $500,000 from the mob boss, and that's when people start to die. so, but the right people die, and it has an upbeat ending, very upbeat, and it has great music. So I really like that movie. Horror movies, which one I like, I don't know. Midnight I like because I made it on $70,000 in 35 millimeter with a $10,000 New York mix and Lawrence Tierney, and killed myself making that movie, and people still like it. It just came out on Blu-ray, and so it's like what they call a cult favorite, and it's a damn good story, and the novel is good. It's the novel of mine that sold the most copies everywhere, all over the world. So I like that for that reason. I like Heartstopper based on my novel, The Awakening. I had $800,000 to make the movie, and I needed $3 million. So again, I killed myself. I could have gotten killed easily, making that movie with a bunch of people that financed it and thought they knew everything and knew next to nothing. So, they were geniuses in their own minds.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going around in
They
filmmaking.
brought a lot of cocaine onto the thing, and so onto the project. And I didn't. All I knew was I'd ask for 6 extras, and 2 would show up, and props would disappear and not be there when I needed them, and all kinds of things, like ridiculous things. And then finally, when the movie was in the can and we were editing, I had time to try to find out what in the hell went wrong with this. And that's when I found out that they were getting paid pretty well. Everybody was in that movie. And they were using the money for cocaine. And the movie was like a cocaine party to them instead of a job of making a movie. But it's still pretty good.
Now, a film that you recently done that a dear friend of the show, Debbie Rochon, starred in, My Uncle John is a Zombie, is a really fun
I
flick.
like that movie a lot. I should have mentioned. Actually, it's probably maybe my favorite because it's just funny and it's getting good reviews all over the place. And I played the lead role in it, biggest part I ever played. George Romero said, "You're trying to remake yourself." I said, "What the hell are you talking about? I've done all kinds of things all through my whole career, published magazines and every other damn thing." And I said, "Damn it, I will play this part. And I'll show you." Well, he never got to see it because he died, before we got it done. But anyway, I wrote it. Co-directed it. I needed a co-director. Rob Lucas did a great job with that because I was on camera so much, And I wrote 3 of the songs, and I sing 2 of them as a zombie. And I'm getting good reviews for the singing as well as the acting and directing and so on. So it's just been a real kick. I went to LA to shoot, for shooting Red Tide Massacre, and Rob Lucas has a studio there, Wolfpack Studios. It's fabulous. He drove himself crazy trying to get the studio built all through COVID. And the first thing he said, "I love Uncle John as a Zombie." Well, I was glad to hear him say that. We worked really well together on that movie. Debbie's all good, Debbie should have been a big star, but like if you don't get the breaks and you don't get the publicity, then no matter how talented you are, you're a working actor or actress or filmmaker or whatever, and you may never get rich or even above the poverty line.
You know what? She'll always be Debbie Rochon, though. One of the most beloved screen queens of all time. So she, that's kind of a cool thing to have.
Well, she's so great. She was also in Santa Claus, a movie I made for 40 grand. Mm-hmm. And Kirk Hamlin's a friend of mine, and he tweeted it. He said about that movie. He said, "I love everything that man does," and he liked that one. And it's pretty clever. And the thing with Debbie, you can say, "Debbie, just one more take, and just take the edge off of it just a little bit," and she does exactly that. She's just highly intelligent and very capable.
That's awesome. Did you ever work with Tiffany Shepard?
Did I watch what?
Did you ever work with Tiffany Shepard?
Oh yeah, well she's actually in she's in My Uncle John as a Zombie. She takes the place of one of the TV announcers who gets torn apart by zombies.
Oh.
So in the end, Tiffany's the new what's it called, the anchor for faux TV, FAUX.
So you had to work with Tiffany. You have my deepest condolences, John. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, dang! That was
we have a lot of fun at the conventions.
Oh no, I'm just teasing. We love Tiffany here. We'd get pretty loaded, and
we'd be partying till 3 or 4 in the morning and singing, but changing the words to the songs and turning them, making the lyrics funny or dirty or whatever, and just having a blast.
No, we love her here. We're just joking. There's a Bill Murray movie out that's super popular right now, a zombie movie, and it's has like it's catching a new life called The Dead Don't Die. And if you like The Dead Don't Die, you will love My Uncle John is a Zombie, because it has the same kind of sensibility and the same sense of humor. So if you have a chance, get your hands on My Uncle John is a Zombie. John, I know. I know you were very kind. We spoke on the phone the other day, and I know I'm interrupting you're watching the Steeler game, so I won't keep you too much longer. But I also know you're a super accomplished author. Tell us a little bit about the books you've written.
Did you say how many?
Well, tell us.
Huh?
You could just tell us about the ones you'd like to speak of, or your latest ones. Just tell us about
I have a whole bunch of latest ones because all through COVID, I kept writing. I tweaked, and I need a new agent because my agent's 89 years old and he retired, and so I didn't have an agent to be marketing the stuff I already wrote, and so I tweaked and improved several novels that I had already written, and then I wrote a couple new ones, and I just finished writing. I wrote back in the 80s. I wrote a script called Earthlings, in the company that made in Stamford, Connecticut. They did Dirty Dancing. What's the name of Vestron? So Vestron was going to make this movie. They were going to finance it for $2.5 million, and then they started thinking about it, and they didn't believe I could make it for $2.5 million because it has saucer landings and extraterrestrials that come to Earth and so on and so on. But I already knew I could make it because I talked to Rick Catazone, who did he did a lot of stuff for Night of the Living Dead, but Evil Dead Part 2, he did the thing where the creature's neck elongates and all that stuff. I mean, he's very good at what he does. I already had got prices from him for doing my creature because they transform. They kill people and transform into them. And plus you have the saucer landings and takeoffs and things like that. So I already knew I could do it for $2.5 million, but anyway, they backed out of the deal, and it's just been sitting there. And so finally, I wrote the novel. I wrote a novel also called Rufus Buck, and my friend Johnny Moya, who has a big Hollywood career, he said he thinks it's the best thing I ever wrote. And when COVID hit, we were almost ready to get the money to shoot it in Montana. And then COVID hit, and it's still, but it's based on a story that always has fascinated me. Do you want to know a little more about it or not?
Sure, absolutely.
Well, Rufus Buck and his gang, there were 5 of them. They were all Cherokee and half-breeds, black and Native American. And they went on a rampage of rape and murder that lasted for 19 days, terrorized the entire West until they were finally caught. And all 5 of them were hanged at once. They had at Fort Smith, Arkansas, Isaac Parker, who was the hanging judge of the 1800s, had a scaffold built that could hang a dozen people at once. And so all 5 of these marauders were hanged at once. And I have a fictional story built around the whole thing. It's not real fictional because it doesn't shy away from their exploits, but it deals more with the lawman and the family, one of the main families that gets terrorized and sort of murdered and raped by this gang. So it's one of the best things I've written, I think. It's 20 said, and the people that liked the script and wanted to do it in Montana So maybe that will get done if it, the whole COVID things ends and the project gets revived. So I also have one called The Hog Lady that I watch a lot of true crime, and it's an amazing story. But this Hog Lady killed a bunch of people and fed them to her hogs, and it turns out she started out in life as a he and became a she. And she did. She was in the Navy, got out of the Navy, bought this little farm, and started taking drugs and everything and start the transformation from male to female. At the same time, she's bumping people off, So again, I wrote a very suspenseful Hitchcock-like. I hate to say Hitchcock-like in a way because, I do my own thing, but it's really suspenseful with a lot of twists and turns again of, with the real Hog Lady's exploits at the root of it.
Now, a few moments ago, when we were talking about my Uncle John film, you had mentioned that George Romero had poked some fun with you about you wanting to recreate your image. Tell us, if you're comfortable with it, tell us a little bit of what your relationship with George was over the course of your lifetimes together, because I can imagine that it had both incredible highs and some lows. So, what are some of your thoughts?
We didn't have that many lows. When I left the company, George actually offered me more money to stay. The company was doing well at that time, but he had brought his wife and her boss from an ad agency into the company, and they ruined it. That's why we all left, basically. So we were rivals in a way. It's two film companies or film people we're competing for a lot of the same money and the same jobs and all that kind of thing. But we all remained friends. We were never enemies. And we never fought or argued like some people thought. We were friends till he died. So I spoke at his funeral. The things I had to say that were actually, some of the lines were printed in a full-page ad in Variety, trumpeting his star on the Walk of Fame, and I was there for that. So, but anytime Russ and George and I got together, and it was nothing but drinking and laughing and all night long. I mean, hilarious. Everybody loved George. George just had a flair and a great personality and very charming and charismatic person. When the last time I saw him alive was in Charlotte, North Carolina, at one of the Mad Monsters shows, and a bunch of us Night of the Living Dead people were there, and my table was next to Richard Ritchie's, and Richard in the Night of the Living Dead plays the first zombie that gets shot in the head. He gets shot at the window, he gets shot, he goes down, but he gets back up, and then the shot in the head is what kills him, which shows the audience that's how you kill a bull. Okay. In the remake, I was trying to come up with things to give the audience some spice for the end of the movie, because we lost a lot of shooting time with heavy rains that came through following hurricanes in Florida. So I said to George, in the first movie, in the original movie, Marilyn Eastman dressed up like a ghoul and ate an insect from a tree. Why this time maybe one of them ought to eat a mouse? He said, see if the special effects guys can do that. So I went to the trailer and, well, yeah, we can make a mouse. So Richard and I are talking about that, and Richard, yeah. For those of us who know Richard well, he's very spacey and far out at times, and he has this very overly dramatic way about him. And so he said it was felt really funny having that furry little thing in my mouth. I said, you ought to be glad we didn't shove the gerbil up your ass. So everybody was cracking up, all of us, because we all knew Richard. And there was no gay implication about it, And it was just shove a gerbil up your ass. So everybody's laughing like hell. So I said, I'm going out and see if George has a long line in front of him or not. And if he doesn't, I'm going to tell him this because he'll get a kick out of it. And he didn't have a very long line, so I sat with him behind his table and I told him, and he did totally crack up over it. And then he said, they found things on my lungs. He said, I have to have a biopsy and a CAT scan. That was in March of 2017. And so we knew right then things weren't good.
Mm-hmm.
He died that July. So then we went, Russ and Rob Lucas and I and Gary Strider, we went to the funeral in Toronto. That's where about 25 people spoke, because whoever wanted to could get up and, share their memories and so on. And so I went up and I told some things, stories from the old days when we were just getting started that people got a kick out of. And then I said one day, George and I were walking in New York and talking about how much we appreciated the lifestyle and the verve and the music of Sammy Davis and Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra. And I said, the world is a poorer place without them. And I said, the world's a poorer place without George Romero. He made his mark on the world, and now we'll have to cherish our memories. And those were the lines that got printed in Variety. So, on the distributor's edition of My Uncle John is a Hobby, the DVD and Blu-ray, I recreated that whole speech. So 17-minute extra, my tribute to George.
You know what? I could see that this is taking an emotional turn on you, and I'm sorry for making you think of, your dear friend. But it shows what an unbelievably wonderful human being you are, and what a great friendship you guys had. John, can you tell the folks out there where they can find you on social media, and if you have any upcoming appearances that people could come out and meet you, because you are really awesome guests at these conventions.
I have, let's see, coming up, I have next weekend at Monster Bash in Mars, PA. That's a good convention that devotes itself mostly or largely to the horror films of the 40s, 50s, and 60s, but it's good for all kinds of things. I mean, whatever you're interested in, it's a great convention with really good entertainment. It's well run. And then the New Jersey Horror Convention, and I forget the date, it's in November. And Horror Realm, again, that's in Pittsburgh.
I think New Jersey Horror Con is November 12th through the 14th.
Okay,
Yep.
Thanks. And there's a Zombie Day, October 28th, all day long. Me and my business partner and the director and producer friend Gary Vincent and the other filmmakers will be at West Virginia University, my alma mater. They're going to show Night of the Living Dead, and we're going to do Q&As and stuff. That's a one-day event, October 28th in Morgantown, West Virginia. There's probably one or two others right before the end of the year, but I don't recall them right now. I have them on Facebook, but I'm on Facebook, but I'm at my 5,000 friend limit all the time, and I have probably a couple of thousand or more people trying to become friends, and I can't accept them because I'm at the limit. And on my website is called the johnrusso.com. Gary Vincent created my website, we called it John Russo because John Russo is a common name, and there's lots of them around, but that's me, johnrusso.com.
Awesome.
I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn too, and I have about 7,000 LinkedIn fans and 7,000 on Twitter and all that kind of thing. You pretty much have to have that stuff, even though it's a pain in the butt sometimes.
Well, John, I could talk to you for hours. I want to thank you so very, very much for joining us tonight. You are a living legend. You're an icon, but even more important than that, you're a very, very kind and decent human being, and everybody who meets you is just better for having that moment with you because you're just such a stand-up guy. And I hope your Steelers win tonight, and I can't wait till I get to see you again and we can grab a burger or something. Ladies and gentlemen, the living legend, the icon, Mr. John Russo.
If you're going to be at any of those conventions, let me know. And thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Now I'll go and I'll find out where the score stands with.
Enjoy the game, Mr. Russo. Have a lovely evening, and I'll talk to you soon, John.
Okay, thanks.
Good night, John.
Ladies and gentlemen, a living legend, Mr. John Russo.
Wow. You know, I had a couple of questions I wanted to ask, but I couldn't interrupt because everything was just so engaging.
Oh, I'm sorry. You should. You could just stick your head in there and ask.
Things that I was curious about, and I know it may be some like a cookie cutter question, but with the rating system with Night of the Living Dead back then, I was curious about that.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, it not released with a rating?
You know what we'll have to do? We'll have to have John on the Vincent Price show, and we'll find out any additional questions we can ask Mr. Russo. When he was, there's a couple moments there that I think were like horror history. I mean, he literally explained to us, which I don't think is in print in too many places. He literally explained to us how he created flesh-eating zombies, the genre of flesh-eating zombies. And when you guys really think about how incredible that is and how many things were spawned off of that concept, it's really boggles the mind because I know in the 40s and 50s before those films came out, and zombies did exist. I mean, in fact, Karloff and Lugosi made a movie called, I think, Black Zombie or some white zombie. I'm not exactly sure what the movie was.
There's definitely White Zombie, yeah.
White Zombie? Was that what it was called?
Pretty sure it's
but those zombies were just animated corpses. The idea of a flesh-eating zombie or a zombie that needs to eat up brains or human flesh to continue to exist is pretty epic. And then to see this man talk about his dear friend George Romero in a very candid way, and you could see the emotion start to overcome him.
No doubt.
Was really, really, really something special. And there's a lot of people out there who have their ideas about their relationship, John and George's. But if you had any idea other than two guys who were in the same industry but thoroughly loved each other, you have the wrong idea if you think it's anything other than that, because the man himself just told you otherwise. And that was actually very, very nice to hear. To hear that two men who worked so hard on creating something that was so important to us culturally never had any kind of issues or animosity with each other, despite like what a lot of bullshit that you hear about everything. So,
well, speaking of culturally, so Night of the Living Dead is public domain now, and that's another thing I wanted to touch upon. I mean, it is in so many different horror movies, so it's even getting bigger and bigger.
Absolutely.
Because today's generation doesn't know what is actually on the screen, and then they start researching it. And
there was so many questions that we could have asked him, and there are so many interviews out there and documentaries that kind of touch on those questions.
There's plenty of that.
Yeah, if
There's
you're
plenty out there. There's plenty out there you can find. Getting the man, like you said, David, to emote and talk about his life is everything.
I think that's the direction we need to go to as a show, to clear up misconceptions about the man, to clear up misconceptions about his relationships with people. And there was a moment there when I actually felt my eyes starting to well up, to see a man who's accomplished so much in his life, who's so important to the genre that I especially love, and I know you guys are really big horror fans too. To see, to touch his soul like we did tonight, and to have him speak of, because believe it or not, he's very tight-lipped, especially about his relationships with people involved with Night of the Living Dead. But I actually know John now for about 5 or 6 years, and we talk on the phone, and we've done shows together, and we've grabbed a bite to eat together, and I think he felt like he was talking to, a buddy. So it kind of was a wall that is usually very sturdy and always there in interviews was knocked down tonight. And we got to see the man who, and this is no knock to George Romero. George Romero is a legend, a living, I always say living legend because you just, I don't mean it that way. No disrespect. George Romero is an iconic legend, but John Russo was right there when the iconic idea of Night of the Living Dead was created, and it was a work that they both could hang their hats on because it seemed like it was a team effort. And John coming up with the flesh-eating zombie part is pretty much the thing that drives the entire genre, not only Night of the Living Dead, but I'm talking about Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead. What's the show that's on AMC right now? I said it earlier.
It's one of the
Walking Dead. Was it good? The Walking Dead.
Walking Dead. Yeah.
Walking Dead. Yeah.
But now Sci-Fi has one on also, I believe, and it's pertaining to the.
What was funny is he had mentioned that they called them ghouls for years.
Right.
Who coined zombie and when exactly? That's to me that's pretty fascinating too, because they didn't. They called them ghouls from the 60s, 70s. Somewhere zombie became the go-to term for the flesh-eating undead.
Yeah, and as we discussed earlier, I mean, even in the 1930s and 40s, Universal Pictures with Karloff and Lugosi had movies where they were coined zombies. So I mean, I think it was probably a marketing thing. I remember when I was a kid in the late 70s and early 80s, and they had Night of the Living Dead shirts, and they had that wonderful Kira Shawn T-shirt where she's. If you know the character, and it said like all kinds of. I think zombie just looked cooler on merch than ghoul did, and so I mean, who really knows the answer? But with that being said, I'm flabbergasted that what a wonderful, wonderful, iconic interview we did tonight with really a horror icon. I want to next week. Joe and Scott, you guys don't know this, but next week on this very show, we are going to have one of the most iconic horror composers of all time, Mr. Alan Howarth, who did Friday the 13th and done. If you look him up, he's like he's an amazing film composer, and keep us in this whole Halloween mode leading up to the Great Vincent Price show. We're going to have Alan Howarth on next Sunday, right here at 10 p.m. I think that sometime in the not so distant future, we should have Mr. Russo back on, because there's so much more we could talk to. He has such a storied and long career, and he was just a wonderful. Yeah,
speaking of which, Daniella is saying I would love to hear him talk deeper about his writing process. I agree. He's such a fascinating man.
Yep. If you guys, I was sitting in an ice cream parlor, and I called John, I think on maybe Tuesday. And I said, hey, John, you want to do my show? He's like, I got no camera. He's all grumpy and yelling at me. And I was like, all right, John, relax. You don't have to do the show. And then literally on Wednesday night, John calls me back and says, you know what, Dave, I'll do your show. I was like, oh, John, you're the best. So he's like, but the Steelers are on, so you can't have me on for too long. So I said, John, I will have you on from 10:10 to 10:50, I promise. And he's like, fine. And I kept him to a little bit past 10:50, so I apologize, John. But to have him on tonight and to talk as candidly as he did about so many things was really just fantastic. You guys have anything we want to say before we wrap this bad boy up?
I do, but I'll let Mr. Schiaffo go first.
Okay.
No pressure.
No, about yeah. Is this the close or is this about the show? Is this the good night or is this about John? Is this
you could
good
say
night?
whatever you could say whatever you want. It's a show.
Well, I mean, you've pretty much covered everything there possibly is, but I'll just say the word pioneer and the word legend really gets bandied around a lot. But tonight, this cat is it. I mean, if you do the timeline, it's like Citizen Kane of indie horror. It's an amazing film for indie film, and it happens to be a horror. I mean, it's just a pow. So that guy, and he's been doing it for what, 6 decades, or man, just the amount of stuff the stories he could tell. He could be, I don't know, he must have done a book. He should do a book. John, do a book. You need to do a book. You probably done. But anyway, this was wonderful. And you know me, you can find me anywhere on the web. There's too much out there about me. I got nothing to say other than thank you for everything.
Nah, it's not that simple. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you go here and there. Same thing.
Here, there, and everywhere. First weekend in Rhode Island. Oh my God, and there's going to be a movies too. So you've got all these maniacs and a movies pop up. So it's just going to be View Askew madness.
Movies pop up as well. That is awesome. Okay, so I'm going to take a brief moment, if I may. I'm not going to go full screen because nobody needs to see all this. But my brother CJ, shameless plug, yes, coming up tomorrow, actually. Trying to find, there it is, my Manic Mondayz with CJ Robert. I can't do the rolling thing, he already knows that. But will premiere tomorrow night on the Indie Escape Network. Please check it out. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you like, subscribe, and all that good stuff to Daily Madison's The End of the Night on Facebook, and also the Indie Brigade Network, where his shows will also be archived.
Yes, indeed. And I can't wait for CJ's show. CJ is a really talented cat, and he's a welcomed addition to the network, as everybody else is. All right, everybody. We are 2 weeks away from the enormous Vincent Price missed tape, lost interview show. I am besides myself. I'm literally every day like counting down, crossing out X's to get to Halloween. Not only is Halloween my favorite holiday, but I'm going to end Halloween night with you guys, my family here on the Indie Escape and the End of the Night. We're going to listen to Vincent Price be interviewed by none other than my brother Bob and yours truly. And it's going to rock your world, because some of the information that he lets go in this interview has never, ever been heard or told on any other medium, not on talk shows or magazines. We got Mr. Price while he was on Broadway working on Diversions and Delights. My brother Bob appeared in many Broadway and off-Broadway shows with Mr. Price. They became dear friends, and we got him in a very, very candid and wonderful interview like you've never, ever heard before. I guarantee if you are a fan of, who isn't a fan of Vincent Price, you will have to watch that show. Now,
How old were you? I'm sorry, when you did the interview?
I was 9.
So your voice is going to be like this.
It is. It's not much different than it is now, sadly. But my brother was 18 and a lot smarter, and asked I was like, "Hi, Mr. Price, what's your favorite ice cream?" No, it was actually wonderful parts about his working with his favorite actors and actresses. There's a wonderful part about him talking about making a third Dr. Phibes movie, which never happened. There's just information that will really, really blow your mind. And just to hear that voice on Halloween night and
That
something and something you've never heard before, that's really going to be something. Next Sunday at 10 o'clock, we're going to have Alan Howarth, the amazing composer. He's best known for doing Friday the 13th and a whole, just look him up. He's the cat's meow of composers. He's a great guy. He'll be joining us next Sunday at 10 o'clock. Watch Mr. Hush on Tubi if you can. It's the Halloween season. John Russo actually is a big fan of Mr. Hush's, so not only is he a baby David? Okay.
The interview.
Oh, the interview. Okay. I thought she was making an offer. I got all excited. Now she threw me off, man. What were we talking about?
Next weekend.
Oh yeah, no. I was being a whore and trying to shill people into watching Mr. Hush. I was
All right, Mr. Hush. Mr. Hush on Tubi.
Yeah, on Tubi. And you know what's really John Russo actually is a big fan of the movie. He when he seen it, he called me up and was like, this is a really cool flick. So I'm honored that Mr. Russo, John Landis, and Tom Holland all think Mr. Hush is a cool flick. But I pay them well, so they had to say that. Haven for Heroes, Emma Garnham, thank you for the kind words. An amazing show. You have an amazing shop, Haven for Heroes in Port Jervis, New York, up in Orange County. If anybody wants toys or comic books or magic cards or all that fun shit, go over and hang out at Haven for Heroes. It's just a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful place.
That's what the kids refer to it as, fun shit.
Yeah, fun shit.
Shit. Magic cards.
With that being said, anything else, gentlemen? All right, we will leave you with this. Remember, no man is a failure who has friends. We'll see you guys next week, and we're 2 weeks away from our frickin' Halloween show, everybody. Peace out, and we'll see you guys next week.